More than 50 countries have reached out to the White House to discuss potential trade deals following President Donald Trump's sweeping new tariffs, according to top administration officials. Last week, President Trump announced broad tariffs on U.S. imports, triggering retaliatory measures from China and raising fears of a global trade war. Financial markets have since reacted sharply, with U.S. stocks tumbling about 10% in 2 days. On Sunday, U.S. economic officials appeared on national talk shows to defend the tariffs. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett told ABC News that the measures were not intended to pressure the Federal Reserve into cutting interest rates.
There might be some increase in prices, but the fact is that if there were going to be a heavy burden on the U.S. consumer, then this trade deficit that for 30 years we've seen really since China entered the WTO would be something that would have gone down. It would have gone down over time. It would have responded to the prices. The bottom line is that China entered the WTO in 2000. In the 15 years that followed, real incomes declined about $1,200 cumulatively over that time. And so if cheap goods were the answer, if cheap goods were going to make Americans' real wages, real welfare better off, then real incomes would have gone up over that time. Instead, they went down because wages went down more than prices went down. So we got the cheap goods at the grocery store, but then we had fewer jobs. And that's why President Obama and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and President Trump have come out saying we've got to come up with a better policy, a policy that treats our workers fairly compared to everybody else. And now President Trump, true to his word, just like he promised during the campaign, just like he put into his campaign platform, he's delivering on his word.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, speaking on NBC, downplayed recession fears, pointing to stronger than expected jobs growth as evidence of the economy's resilience.
Well, I reject that the assumption. There doesn't have to be a recession. Who knows how the market is going to react in a day, in a week. What we are looking at is building the long-term economic fundamentals for prosperity that I think the previous administration had put us on a course toward financial calamity. Again, this is an adjustment process. What we saw with President Reagan when he brought down the great inflation and we got past the Carter malaise, that there was some choppiness at that time, but he held the course, and we're going to hold the course. And this has been years in the building, years in the making. This unsustainable system, our trading partners have taken advantage of us. We can see that through the large surpluses. We can see this through the large budget deficits. And also, Chris, this is a national security problem, which we saw during COVID. We saw during COVID that optimal supply chains are not resilient. And what I could say is the only good outcome from COVID is it was a beta test for what would happen if our supply chains got broken. And President Trump has decided that we cannot be at risk like that for our crucial medicines, for semiconductors, for shipping. And we are going to move forward so the American people can know that they are going to have a more secure future.
Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has offered zero tariffs as a basis for negotiations, pledging to remove trade barriers rather than imposing reciprocal measures. Hassett claimed that Trump's actions have prompted more than 50 nations to reach out to the White House for trade discussions.
No, I have not been involved in Chinese negotiations this weekend. But there are more than 50 countries reaching out and trying to negotiate this new status with the president.
While some economists worry about inflation and slower growth, Hassett argued that exporters might lower prices to offset the tariffs, minimizing the impact on consumers.
We saw a really, really strong jobs number last time, and we've seen inflation coming down. I think inflation comes from runaway spending that is monetized by the Fed. That's what Jay Powell and Joe Biden gave us last term. And then I saw the Fed kind of saw the error in its ways after a while and started to tighten and help get in control under inflation. And what we're seeing now on the Hill is reduced spending. And so I don't think that the inflationary spiral that we saw last term is a high risk right now.
Meanwhile, Bessent reiterated that current economic data, including job creation, does not point to a recession.
I don't. And I think we could see from the jobs number on Friday that was well above expectations that we are moving forward. So I see no reason that we have to price in a recession.
As global markets remain on edge, US officials continue to frame the tariffs as a strategic repositioning of the country's trade relationships, with discussions now underway with numerous nations.